Hey guys, welcome back to Carib 21 Network. So we have some breaking news coming out of the beautiful twin island of Trinidad and Tobago. So on October 18, 2025, that was yesterday, on Saturday, the American Embassy issued an alert in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, for the American Embassy. And this is an alert to alert all Americans in Trinidad and Tobago to be on the lookout. So I can't believe that these words are coming out of my mouth. But based on this, it seems like Trinidad and Tobago is on the verge of war. Let's talk about it. So the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, she have this attitude whenever the media questions her or anyone in her administration about what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago. She like to go to fear-mongering. That is her go-to word, fear-mongering. Stop fear-mongering. And I realize that a lot of her supporters, they are the same thing. They would go and say the same thing. But now the rubber is hitting the road and we are seeing the real possibility now of Trinidad and Tobago getting caught up in the middle between the war between America and Venezuela. And trust me, people don't understand how serious this is. When you look at what is going on between Russia and Ukraine war would be child's play compared to what a war and with Venezuela and America would be. A war between America and Venezuela would make what is happening in Ukraine look like that was just like a rehearsal. Venezuela is way more equipped for war than a Ukraine fighting against with what you see going on between Ukraine and Russia. And people don't understand what is going on here. But a war between Venezuela and America is not just between Venezuela and America. There's a strong possibility that China could get involved because based on the numbers that we have, China has billions of dollars in investment in Venezuela. Most of the oil that goes to China comes from Venezuela. So this is just not a little war like what we see going on in Ukraine and Russia. This thing could last for years. Remember, the last major war that America was in lasted for over 20 years. And this is a strong possibility that we're seeing in the Caribbean. So people are taking this lightly, talking about fear-mongering. And from day one, I came out strong and said the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is talking herself in the middle of a war. And that is what is happening right now. All of us in the Caribbean understand what is going on between Venezuela and Guyana. Last year, we covered it extensively what is going on between Venezuela and Guyana and the Essequibo region. I am one person that say, look, if it comes down to a conflict and if Venezuela, they target Guyana, I believe that most CARICOM member nation would support Guyana defending itself and would support an American getting involved in a conflict between Guyana and Venezuela. But the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, nobody was talking about any conflict with Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela until this Prime Minister was elected. We understand that Trinidad and Tobago, and since the past 10-15 years, we saw Venezuela being destabilized and we see like hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans leaving, and we understand that a lot of Venezuelans are in Trinidad and Tobago and it could be a burden on the economy. And that is what happened when America goes and destabilizes a country. We see the same thing in Haiti and Dominican Republic, that Haitian people going over to Dominican Republic, and we see the government of Dominican Republic saying that this is a strain on their economy. I remember way back in the days when hundreds, thousands of Cubans were on boat coming into Jamaica and the Jamaican government had to deal with that. But this is not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about a Prime Minister in Kamala Persad-Bissessar that had nothing to do with Venezuela, but seemed like she just talked her way into it. And now we're seeing Trinidad and Tobago, to me today, is more is more at risk than Guyana to be attacked by Venezuela. Just let that sink in. Venezuela and Guyana is the one that are in conflict with the Essequibo region. And today, October 19, 2025, if there is a war between America and Venezuela, the Venezuelan government made it clear that Trinidad is their first target. So this is just crazy. But this is the news coming out of Trinidad and Tobago.
Acting Police Commissioner Junior Benjamin explained the heightened alert by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is based on both the advisory issued by the United States Embassy and intelligence received. Commissioner Benjamin indicated police officers have been deployed and they are monitoring the situation closely.
We have decided to bring all our officers that are part and parcel of the operational team and tactical teams together. We had a brief, and I have ensured that these officers are presently on high alert to ensure safety and security of all our citizens, as well as the all foreign persons who are in Trinidad and Tobago. We have ensured at this time that our officers are ready to deal with any eventualities that might occur.
Mr. Benjamin is asking the public to remain calm, and he assured that the TTPS is actively responding to the advisory.
We want to assure the citizens that there's absolutely no need to panic, but we have ensured as police officers, understanding that we are in an SOE, as well as with the advisory, we have placed our officers there so that we are prepared, to ensure that there is officers always on standby to deal with any eventualities that might occur.
The advisory issued by the U.S. Embassy in Port of Spain warns its citizens to avoid and refrain from visiting all U.S. government facilities in Trinidad and Tobago throughout the Diwali holiday weekend. In addition, they are cautioning U.S. citizens to be aware of their surroundings and monitor reputable news outlets.
Okay, so that was the news coming out of Trinidad and Tobago, courtesy of TTT News. And for those people who are going to come in the comment section and say that this is fear-mongering, let me just give you some history. The last time we saw this, the last time we saw an alert going out from the U.S. Embassy, a security alert, the last time we saw a security alert going out to a U.S. embassy was the U.S. embassy in Ukraine. And let me just educate people how this thing works. America and Canada, they have a system where they have a travel advisory system. They have a very close relationship with their embassy wherever in the world that they are. Canada and America, I would say, have two of the strongest that I've seen. So what happened? When you see a travel advisory go out at level 1, level 2, level 3, they are advising people who are about to travel to a country or are thinking of traveling to the country. Look, you might want to think about it. That is how the travel advisory work. When you see a travel alert, a security alert in Trinidad and Tobago now, this is pretty much an encrypted message saying to Americans in Trinidad and Tobago, you need to get out. That is what normally, when you see America release, the American embassy release a security alert like this, that is what it's normally about. And it's not lost on me that this was issued by the American embassy in Trinidad and Tobago and not Guyana. Because remember, last year we were talking about the conflict, a possible conflict for the Essequibo region, a region that is rich in natural resources that is being disputed between the government of Guyana and Venezuela. And that is something that any government would want to fight out. They would want to get in a fight over it. What we're talking about today, October 19, 2025, is a prime minister in Kamala Persad that if Trinidad should get caught up in this war, it would only be because of her mouth. Her mouth putting her and putting the people of Trinidad and Tobago at risk. That would be the only reason why Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela would be in any type of conflict. They are not worrying about any region like the Essequibo region. There's nothing for Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela to be in conflict about apart from the Prime Minister just coming out and just opening her mouth and talking a bunch of nonsense and provoking a conflict. And now we're seeing this security alert in Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, this is an encrypted message to Americans that, look, if you can get out of Trinidad and Tobago, you better get out. And normally we saw this in Benghazi when the American embassy was attacked in Benghazi when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And we saw that was the last time we saw like a big thing with the American embassy that was attacked. So when you see this come out, you think about Benghazi, you think about the alert that went out in Ukraine before the first bomb dropped in Ukraine. And this is just all because the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago could just not keep her mouth shut. Quiet diplomacy. That is all it took. She did not have to come out and say that she support America being in the Caribbean Sea, because whether she support them or not, America does what America want to do. So her coming out and saying that was something that she did not have to do. She did not have to come out and say the Caribbean is not a zone of peace. All of that is just the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago talking the people of Trinidad and Tobago into the middle of this conflict now with America. And if people in Trinidad and Tobago think that this is fear-mongering, just look what is going on in America and what the media is reporting.
Fox News alert, B-52 bombers are flying off the coast of Venezuela. Trump's not bluffing. Right now, more than 10,000 U.S. soldiers are built up in the Caribbean, on ships in Puerto Rico, locked and loaded. Special operations helicopters were just seen flying 90 miles from Venezuela's coast. This chopper unit's used by Delta Force, Navy SEALs, and the Green Berets. The Black Ops were spotted off the coast of Trinidad. They're very important for search and rescue missions. Also spotted little birds. They're smaller but faster, designed for quick insertion of special operators behind enemy lines. The Ghost was also confirmed to be in the Caribbean. That's the nickname for MV Ocean Trader. It's the kind of ship that doesn't want to be found. It's designed for black ops and special missions because it's dark and blends in with cargo. There's more. 10% of the U.S. naval power is now in the region. It's a major shift. There's subs, several destroyers, and F-35 fighters in Puerto Rico.
So that report is coming out of Fox News, and Fox News is a very conservative media house, and they support Donald Trump 100% in whatever he does. And look, this was the same Fox News that all of last year and 2023, they were reporting and they were against the war in Ukraine, and they were tough on the Biden administration and saying that Biden administration, they have become like a war government. So this is the same Fox now that they are supporting what Donald Trump is doing 100%. And based on what they are reporting now about the amount of military assets in the Caribbean Sea, this is no longer fear-mongering. This is not about sending a message again to Venezuela, the amount of military assets that is out there. Based on everything that they're saying now, that this is at a point of no return. So it is inevitable that Trinidad and Tobago is going to get caught up in the middle of a war between Venezuela and America. From based on what most of the media houses are reporting in America is that now we are at the point of no return. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago who support the Prime Minister, whatever she does, they are going to have to live with this legacy of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago who opened their mouth and put Trinidad and Tobago in the middle of a conflict with Venezuela.
Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar dismissed speculation that Trinidad and Tobago could be drawn into any military conflict with Venezuela. Speaking to reporters, she responded to Venezuela Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, warning TNT not to provoke that country.
I will dare to do what I have to do to keep the people of Trinidad and Tobago safe, and that is my priority. I've said TNT first. That is my priority. I have no intention, we've had no discussions of invading Venezuela, of stepping onto Venezuelan soil. Nothing of the sort is happening.
With the United States in Caribbean waters, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar continues to welcome them, noting that it's not the first time they're here.
If that can help us stem the criminality, the trafficking, the narco-trafficking, the human trafficking, and the pain and suffering that brings to the people here, then yes, we welcome them. And look forward to their cooperation with us.
However, she insisted that Trinidad and Tobago will do what is necessary if its neighbor Guyana is in trouble.
A lot of this fear-mongering, there have been no discussions with the U.S. or anyone else. However, I repeat, should Venezuela invade Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago will definitely step forward in defense of our cousins, our brothers and sisters.
The Prime Minister pointed out that CARICOM's response has been slowed by recent elections in member states, but insisted unity remains the goal.
I think we've had a little bit of a setback given the 2 elections taking place in the CARICOM, and the chairman of the CARICOM, we congratulate Prime Minister Holness, of course, and President Irfan. Their elections would have put I'm not casting any blame here, I'm just saying it might have dampened a cohesive response from the entire CARICOM. But we have always had differences, and that's another thing that is a false narrative. The CARICOM has always had differences, and that's why we say we are sovereign, but at the same time, we speak with one voice. So there are issues that will have differences of opinion.
She also addressed criticism that certain CARICOM countries are fractured over the Venezuela issue.
St. Vincent and Grenadines has always had a different kind of opinion to other members of the CARICOM. That is not to say that we are fractured. On this matter, or the Venice matter, and the Americans in our waters, CARICOM is already fractured. Several members went off to a meeting, the ALBA meeting. Trinidad is not a member of that regional body, ALBA, and made comments and gave statements long before I even stepped onto the plate. So we will have differences, but I think at the end we'll adhere together.
However, the Prime Minister said TNT remains committed to the CARICOM and to its CARICOM neighbours, noting that this country will work with them in every way possible.
I remember when the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago came out and did that interview, and I remember saying that I believe that the Prime Minister need to get a press secretary and someone need to screen the Prime Minister before she go out there and answer any of these questions. Because based on what we saw before, she was already saying a lot of things that would put Trinidad and Tobago at risk. And I remember saying at the time, like, look, nobody asked the Prime Minister opinion of what she would do if Venezuela attacked Guyana. That question was not out there. And even if someone asks you that question, just say, you know what, move on, another question. Quiet diplomacy. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago could stand strong with the people of Guyana, and she could determine in her government that if anything was supposed to happen between Venezuela and Guyana, she's going to support Venezuela. And Caribbean nationals support that 100%, but not coming out without any provocation and putting that message out there. And that is when things turn around, and we saw the war of words between the Venezuelan official and the Trinidadian official. And as I said, it is so ironic that Guyana and Venezuela, they are the one that have the conflict with this Essequibo region. And this is something that has gone back for a long time. And we have reported on it that this is something that the courts are dealing with. And now we are talking more about Trinidad and Tobago being at risk if there's any conflict, if there's any war between Venezuela and America. We're not talking about Guyana on a daily basis, because Guyana, even though Guyana and Venezuela are the ones with the conflict, Trinidad, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, talked herself right into the middle of this. And now the people of Trinidad and Tobago are on high alert because of the Prime Minister's mouth. Her mouth is getting the people of Trinidad and Tobago in a problem. And one of the things that people are not talking about, people are leaving Cuba out of this. But if you know the history, going back to 1905, when America tried to occupy every colony that freed themselves from slavery, from Spanish, from British colonization, America went in and tried to occupy all of those territory. They did it in Cuba in 1905, and Cuba and Venezuela have formed this bond, this strong bond where if you touch Venezuela, you're touching Cuba. And don't think that the Cuban government is going to sit down and watch a war between Venezuela and America and not get involved. And this report is coming out of Cuba.
President Miguel Diaz-Canel appeared. Applause rose like a physical force. cameras tracked his passage, and in a gesture that fused memory and message, he presented a framed image of Fidel and Chavez to visiting Venezuelan officials. The scene was choreography as diplomacy, an assertion of friendship during a moment of regional strain. This was no small gathering. More than 50,000 people filled the avenue, a crowd whose scale and composition conveyed several messages at once. To supporters, it was solidarity, an unmistakable sign that Cuba stands with Venezuela as it faces external pressure and internal turbulence. To opponents and outside observers, it was a deliberate act of statecraft, an assertion that the old networks of solidarity in Latin America remain active and public. Voices on the platform did not hesitate to turn to those pressures. Pedro Infante, who serves as first vice president of Venezuela's National Assembly, took the microphone and framed the gathering in stark terms. He spoke of a people confronting a conspiracy of unity and resolve. In his words, faced with this threat, our people are clear, united, aware, and have the means and methods to defeat this conspiracy against the peace of Venezuela. Those in the square received his declaration with applause and chants, the crowd affirming what the speech declared, that solidarity is both moral and tactical. The Cuban leadership amplified that posture. Roberto Morales, a senior official in the Cuban Communist Party, chose language designed to make allegiance unmistakable. Whoever messes with Venezuela messes with Cuba. We are one trench, one heart, two peoples. It was a reframing of regional politics in military terms, trenches and hearts, that refuses the notion of neutrality. The phrase echoed across the avenue, a slogan and a warning rolled in.
So at the end of the day, this is not just any other story. This is very personal to me. Like, I love and respect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago, the people of Trinidad and Tobago don't deserve this. They don't deserve a prime minister talking them into a conflict. You know, I often say to people that I've never once in my life met a Trinidadian in person that I never like. Trinidadian, to me, they're always the life of the party, always the funniest people in the room, very loving, warm people. And now we're seeing Trinidad and Tobago, people that both supported the prime minister and people that did not support the prime minister are going to be caught up in this conflict between America and Venezuela. And why? Because the prime minister just could not keep her mouth shut. And this, as I said, this is very personal to me because, like, as someone that grew up in the 80s and remember when Jamaican government, Jamaica was destabilized by the American government and how Jamaicans suffer. And I know the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is trying to make this seem like America, the American government, is coming in to rescue the people of Trinidad and Tobago from gang violence. Gang violence have been increasing every year for the past 20 years in Trinidad and Tobago. Not once in any of President Trump's announcement did the President of America say anything about helping the Caribbean fighting the flow of illegal weapons in the Caribbean. Everything that he said was about America. America first. So I don't know why the Prime Minister is thinking that somehow this is going to help the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I warned, a destabilized Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana will suffer more than any other Caribbean islands, whether Jamaica, whether St. Vincent, Barbados. Based on proximity, Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana should want to act with diplomacy, quiet diplomacy, and to try every single thing that they can do to make sure that there's not a war going on between America and Venezuela. But the people of Trinidad and Tobago are now living in a real possibility of something that we have never seen before. We have never seen a war in the Caribbean before. The invasion of Grenada, that wasn't a war. That was America coming in, bullying and taking over the airport. What we saw happen in Panama, that wasn't a war. They did not have the power to fight back. But trust me, Venezuela with a big army and what is going on in Venezuela now, and a lot of people are mobilized and ready to defend their country. This is not going to be an easy war. And I pray that it doesn't get to this, but The people of Trinidad and Tobago, we have to keep them in our prayers because this is just not looking good. So guys, sound off in the comment section and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. And remember, peace. I'm out.